does. She uses her body.
Caitlin Clark is the reason why a lot of great things is going to happen for the WNBA. We have grown-ass men and women out here doing whatever they can to try to make sure that does not happen.
A fist to the throat while she was on the ground, not during a contested rebound, not in the chaos of two players fighting for position at full speed, after the play, after the ball was gone, after there was nothing left to compete for except the decision about what to do with your closed fist, while the most important player in women's basketball is lying defenseless on the floor beneath you, and the official standing on the baseline with a direct sightline to every single frame of what just happened, did nothing. No whistle, no call, no flagrant, no technical, nothing. Caitlin Clark left the game in the third quarter with a back injury and did not return. And the basketball world, NBA fans, WNBA fans, analysts, coaches, legends, and the greatest basketball player alive responded with one unified voice that has not quieted down since.
He reached out and was like, "Is there any way I can help you?"
I think LeBron has just been there to support me more than anything. He understands the microscope that I'm under and the spotlight that's on me, and I think he just wants to be there for me more than anything. When I was hurt last year, he reached out and was like, "Is there any way I can help you? Like, is there anybody I can connect you with?"
LeBron James is involved in this story in ways that go significantly deeper than a social media comment. His inner circle has used a specific word to describe what happened on June 24, 2026, and that word is not foul. That word is bounty. The full picture of what happened that night, who has responded, what 2 years of media narrative contributed to the environment that produced it, and what the WNBA is obligated to do next, is what we are breaking down completely right now. By the end of this, you will understand exactly why this moment is bigger than one play, one player, and one missed call.
WNBA is putting itself well in the category of the WWE, where you don't really talk about the games, you talk about all the stupid stuff that's surrounded. They're also trying to make Alyssa Thompson a victim for the throat punch heard around the world of Caitlin Clark.
Precision matters here because the details of this specific sequence are more damning than the summary version that has been circulating across social media. Indiana Fever versus Phoenix Mercury. Second quarter, just over 3 minutes in. There was a loose ball situation on the floor, the kind of contested scramble that happens multiple times every game in a physical professional basketball league. Players from both sides were battling for possession in the way that physical players battle for loose balls. That part of the sequence is standard basketball. That part has a defensible explanation rooted in competitive intensity and the normal chaos of a live game.
Deals with there's a lot of rhetoric behind her that she really has no control over, and I think that the way she handles that is just amazing. Like, I think when it comes to the game of basketball, like, she's probably top 5 most famous people that are playing right now, just in general. That includes our league.
What happened after the ball was no longer part of the action is what has united the basketball universe in a way that almost never happens across both the NBA and WNBA fan bases simultaneously. Clark was on the ground. The play was functionally over. The ball had moved away from the immediate area. There was no longer a basketball reason for any contact to occur between the players still in the vicinity of where the loose ball scramble had happened. In that moment, after the play, after the ball was gone, after the competitive justification for contact had expired, Alyssa Thomas drove her knee into Clark's thigh. And then, while Clark remained on the court, Thomas put her closed fist into Clark's throat.
I do think that there is a thing called pretty privilege. There is a thing called white privilege. There is a thing called tall privilege. And we have to acknowledge that. And so part of it is about race, because if you think about the Brittany Griners of the world, you know, why did she have to go to play in Russia?
Because they wouldn't pay her.
Because they wouldn't. Yeah.
Not an open hand, not a reaching motion toward a ball that was no longer there, a closed fist into the throat of a player who was on the ground and had no ability to protect herself from contact she had no reason to anticipate because the play was already dead. Thomas then stepped over her. The official who could have called this, who was positioned on the baseline with the kind of sightline that officiating crews are specifically placed to maintain, registered 0 response. No foul, no flagrant 1, no flagrant 2, no technical. The game continued as though nothing had occurred outside the normal boundary of competitive basketball contact.
More relatable to more people because she's white, because she's attractive. And unfortunately, there still is that stigma against the LGBTQ plus community. 70% of the WNBA is black. A third of the players are in the LGBTQ plus community. And we have to do something about that stigma.
Clark went to the locker room later in the third quarter with a back injury. She did not return to the game. The most important player in the WNBA, the player whose presence in the league has driven every commercial breakthrough the organization has experienced over the last 2 years, left a nationally televised game because of contact that the officiating crew on the floor declined to acknowledge with a single whistle blow. The Indiana Fever's response through official channels made it clear that the organization did not view what happened as an officiating miss that reasonable people could evaluate differently from different angles. Stephanie White's post-game press conference, in stark contrast to her handling of the Carrington situation weeks earlier, was immediate, direct, and unambiguous. Egregious, crazy, dangerous, absolutely unacceptable. Those were her words, delivered without the hedging and the personal loyalty complications that had characterized her previous high-profile press conference moment. This time, there was no revised story 3 days later. This time, the assessment was clear on night 1, because the clarity of what the footage showed left no room for the kind of institutional comfort-seeking that had defined the earlier episode.
You guys may not have said everybody, but the prevailing sentiment for folks that are just joining the WNBA and following women's sports is unfair to the women of this league, to your point, who have laid the groundwork for Caitlin Clark to come in and now take it to the next level. That's all I'm saying in these conversations. Kennedy Carter's behavior is not indicative of the entire league. We are still talking about competition where you are allowed to get a little extra elbow in if you are competing and you do it within the parameters of the game. The game is physical. Caitlin is helping to grow the league. These women understand that, but she cannot be babied as a rookie. That's all I'm at.
The Fever also went on record through their front office about the league's investigation process, and their complaint was pointed. No one from the league office contacted their security team. No one contacted the coaching staff. The people closest to what happened on the floor that night were not consulted as part of whatever review process the league conducted before arriving at its response. That procedural complaint matters because it speaks directly to whether the league's investigation was a genuine attempt to understand what occurred or a managed response designed to produce a predetermined outcome with minimum institutional disruption.
The easiest way to find someone's value is to see what happens when they're gone. And I honestly think at the end of this year, Caitlin Clark should just retire. She knows she's not going to retire permanently, but when you look at all the corporate sponsors that have come on board to this league, you look at how everything has been elevated over the last couple of years with the WNBA, we all know it's because of one reason, but people that are, anti-Caitlin Clark just do not want to believe that.
Before examining what LeBron's reaction to the Thomas incident means, it is worth establishing what the relationship between LeBron James and Caitlin Clark actually is, because the media version of it tends to flatten something that is significantly more substantive than a celebrity offering casual social media support to a popular athlete. The documented connection between them runs through the period when Clark was most vulnerable, the 2025 WNBA season, when injuries cascaded in a way that effectively wiped out her second professional year: a quad strain, a groin injury, an ankle bone bruise.
The referees, the officials completely missed the call. Because this happened to Caitlin Clark, and we're in this mode where every time Caitlin Clark is fouled, anytime anybody breathes on her, it brings out the hottest, the most scorching of takes. So in Boomer Esiason's mind is that Caitlin Clark is straight and white and therefore deserves a little bit more respect. And what he said was racist. Right?
Each one arriving before she had fully recovered from the previous one. Clark posted an emotional update that she would not be returning that season, and the response from the sports world was enormous. Among the people who responded was LeBron James, directly on her Instagram, with the words, "Minor setback for a major comeback. Rest up, get healthy, and be you.
You know, but I'm rooting for Caitlin because I've been in that seat before. I've walked that road before. I hope she kills. I hope Aaliyah Boston does amazing. And we have grown-ass men and women out here doing whatever they can to try to make sure that does not happen. That is the weirdest thing in the world, but it is what it is. And I'm glad that Caitlin has a great head on her shoulder.
That comment, taken in isolation, could be read as a high-profile athlete offering generic encouragement to another high-profile athlete in a difficult moment. Clark herself made clear it was something more specific than that. Speaking to reporters ahead of the 2026 season, she confirmed that LeBron had reached out personally, not through social media but directly, and had offered to help in concrete terms. He asked if there was anyone he could connect her with. He asked if there was any way he could assist her recovery process. Clark's description of what he offered was the language of someone with genuine access to resources and relationships that could make a material difference, not the language of someone sending thoughts and prayers from a comfortable distance. She described him as someone who understands the microscope she operates under and the specific pressures that come with being the most visible player in your league at a young age. That specific understanding of what it feels like to be the most targeted, most scrutinized, most discussed athlete in a professional sports ecosystem is not something most people can offer from genuine personal experience. LeBron James is one of the few people alive who can, because he has lived that specific version of professional sports existence for over 2 decades. When he told Clark he understood what she was experiencing, that was not empathy manufactured for public consumption. That was recognition from someone who has spent his entire adult life inside the same kind of pressure system she was navigating. When Clark posted ahead of opening night of the 2026 season, her return from the injury year, her re-emergence into the league she had been forced to watch from the sideline, LeBron was in the comments with 3 letters, LFG, simple, direct, real. The kind of comment that a person leaves when they have been following someone's journey closely and feel the weight of the moment personally. This is the relationship context that matters when evaluating what LeBron's inner circle said in the aftermath of June 24th. This is not a famous person reacting to a viral clip of an athlete he has watched occasionally. This is someone who has been personally invested in Caitlin Clark's trajectory, who has followed her career through its most difficult stretch, who has offered genuine material support during her injury period, and who watched on June 24th as a closed fist landed on her throat while she was on the ground, and an official standing 10 feet away did nothing about it. His reaction did not come from a place of casual outrage. It came from a place of sustained, documented personal investment in the person who absorbed that contact. And the people in his immediate circle processed what they saw through the same lens of genuine connection that LeBron himself had been operating from for 2 years. The word that changed the entire register of this story did not come from a sports journalist or a television analyst or a former player with a media platform. It came from inside LeBron James's personal inner circle. Craig Farnan, known publicly as Cuffs the Legend, is not a fringe social media account with no credibility connection to the people his posts reference. He is someone whose commentary LeBron has repeatedly amplified and co-signed across his own platforms. The kind of proximity that communicates genuine personal relationship rather than casual online association. When Cuffs posts something that LeBron's circle engages with directly, the content carries a different weight than the standard sports commentary that circulates in the same ecosystem. What Cuffs posted in the aftermath of the Thomas incident did not use the careful, qualified language of someone speculating about motives or offering an interpretation that might be contested. He was direct. Dana White put a bounty on her. That specific framing, a bounty, a deliberate coordinated action, rather than an individual act of competitive aggression, recontextualized the June 24th incident from a missed call story into something with an entirely different set of implications. The word bounty in a professional sports context carries specific historical weight. It invokes the NFL's Bountygate scandal, in which the New Orleans Saints were found to have operated a system of financial incentives for players to injure opposing players. The investigation, the suspensions, the commissioner's response, and the institutional reckoning that followed demonstrated that when a professional sports league determines that targeted physical harm has been coordinated rather than incidental, the consequences operate on a completely different scale than a standard foul review. The word bounty is not a synonym for dirty play. It is a specific allegation about coordination and intent that, if substantiated, would represent a fundamental violation of the league's integrity standards. Cuffs did not stop there. His broader assessment of where the WNBA finds itself right now was equally direct. He placed the league in the category of the WWE, an organization where the discussion around the product is no longer primarily about the athletic competition itself, but about the surrounding drama, controversy, and spectacle that has come to define its public identity. He noted that the same environment was now generating attempts to make Alyssa Thomas a victim in the aftermath of the throat punch, a reframing that he rejected with the same directness he had applied to the bounty claim. The combination of those two elements, the bounty allegation and the WWE comparison, landing from someone in LeBron James's personal circle, produced a moment of social media detonation that amplified the story beyond its already significant reach. When LeBron's world speaks about professional sports in that specific language, the entire sports media ecosystem stops and listens, not because of celebrity proximity alone, but because LeBron James has demonstrated over a multi-decade career an accurate read of how sports institutions operate, what they protect, and when they are failing the people whose labor makes them valuable. His inner circle calling this a bounty is not a take to be dismissed or minimized. It is a specific, serious allegation from people with genuine knowledge of how professional sports organizations function, delivered in response to footage that millions of people watched and arrived at their own troubling conclusions about independently. To understand why June 24th happened in the context it happened in, you have to go back 2 full years and examine what the most prominent media voices in American sports were telling the world and telling WNBA locker rooms about why Caitlin Clark was popular. The View did not dedicate a segment to Caitlin Clark's basketball ability. They did not discuss her logo threes or her court vision or the passing range that made NBA point guards stop and watch clips on their phones during film sessions. They dedicated a national segment to a specific argument. Caitlin Clark's popularity leads to questions of race and sexuality. That was the framing. Not questions of talent, not questions of impact, questions of race and sexuality. Host Sunny Hostin delivered the core argument directly and without qualification. She said there is a thing called pretty privilege. There is a thing called white privilege. She said Clark is more relatable to more people because she is white and because she is attractive. She went further, connecting Clark's audience to what she characterized as a stigma against LGBTQ athletes, using Clark's popularity as evidence of a broader cultural bias rather than as a reflection of extraordinary athletic achievement drawing extraordinary public attention. That argument did not stay on The View. It was picked up, amplified, and repeated across the sports media landscape by voices with significant platforms and significant audiences. ESPN analyst Monica McNutt framed the young female fans gravitating toward Clark as people drawn by racial identification rather than athletic inspiration. The framing positioned Clark's most enthusiastic supporters as participants in a racial dynamic, rather than sports fans responding to the most compelling player the women's game had produced in a generation. Stephen A. Smith made versions of the same argument. Shannon Sharpe engaged with it. USA Today ran it. The New York Times gave it space. The machine that shapes how millions of people understand professional sports spent 2 consecutive years pumping a specific interpretation of Caitlin Clark's popularity into the cultural atmosphere surrounding the league she played in. Bobby Burak's piece at Outkick this week said the thing that most mainstream outlets have been unwilling to say with that degree of directness. If players in WNBA locker rooms are repeatedly told by ESPN, by The View, by USA Today, by the New York Times, by current and former players on national broadcasts, that Caitlin Clark's wealth, fame, and influence are products of racial privilege rather than exceptional ability, it should not surprise anyone when some of those players develop resentment toward her that expresses itself in physical terms on a basketball court. The media narrative created an environment. The environment produced a culture. The The culture was present on June 24th when a closed fist landed on Caitlin Clark's throat, and the official with the direct sightline chose not to blow the whistle. That connection between what prominent media voices spent 2 years saying and what happened on a professional basketball court on a Tuesday night in June is the most important and least discussed dimension of this entire story. And it is the one that the people who built that narrative are now working hardest to avoid examining. Media narratives do not stay on television screens and newspaper pages. They travel. They get discussed. They get absorbed into the professional environment of the people they are about, and they shape the social and psychological atmosphere of that environment in ways that are difficult to measure directly, but impossible to deny when you look at what they produce over time. WNBA players watch ESPN. They read sports coverage. They are on social media platforms where the arguments being made on national broadcasts circulate within minutes of being delivered. When Monica McNutt says on ESPN that young white girls are gravitating toward Clark because of racial identification, that argument does not disappear when the broadcast ends. It gets clipped, shared, discussed, debated, and embedded into the ongoing conversation happening among people who play in the same league Clark plays in, who compete against her in games with standings implications, and who have their own complex feelings about the attention and resources flowing in her direction. When Sunny Hostin says on The View that Clark's popularity is about white privilege and pretty privilege rather than basketball ability, that characterization does not stay in a television studio in New York. It becomes part of the cultural air surrounding the league. Players who might have had straightforward competitive feelings about a dominant new talent, the normal mix of admiration, rivalry, and motivation that elite athletes feel toward other elite athletes, now have a media-supplied framework that reframes those feelings in racial terms. A competitor who beats you is one thing. A beneficiary of systemic privilege who is receiving advantages you are not receiving because of who she is rather than what she can do is a fundamentally different psychological object. 2 years of the second framing, delivered by credentialed voices on major platforms, creates a professional environment where resentment has institutional permission to exist in a way it would not have without the narrative providing its justification. This is not a complicated psychological mechanism. It is straightforward social dynamics applied to a specific professional context. What people in positions of cultural authority repeatedly tell a group about another member of that group shapes how that group perceives and treats the person being discussed. This is true in workplaces. It is true in institutions. And it is true in professional sports locker rooms, where a specific player has been the subject of a sustained media argument about whether her success is legitimate. The players who have been most physically aggressive toward Clark across this 2-year period are not operating in an information vacuum. They exist inside the same media environment as everyone else. The arguments circulating about Clark's popularity being racial rather than earned did not create the individual decision to throw a fist to the throat while she was on the ground. Individual decisions belong to the individuals who make them. But the cultural environment that surrounds those decisions, the one that had been actively constructed by prominent media voices for 2 full years, is not irrelevant to understanding how a professional athlete arrives at the point where that decision gets made on a national broadcast without apparent concern for what it looks like or what it means. The people who built that narrative now own a share of the environment it created. That is not a comfortable conclusion for the institutions involved. It is an honest one. Here is what the media machine did in the days following June 24th, and it is important to document it precisely because the pivot itself is revealing. A closed fist to the throat of a defenseless player. A missed call from an official with a direct sightline. The most important player in the WNBA leaving the game with an injury and not returning. LeBron James's inner circle using the word bounty. Lisa Leslie, LaShawn McCoy, and Stephanie White all responding with language ranging from egregious to the league will be over if they do not act. The story was as clear as any story in recent sports memory. The accountability question was as simple as the footage that documented what occurred. And Jemele Hill went on air and said that the people calling for a foul were implying Clark deserved special treatment because she is straight and white. Take a moment with that response. A closed fist to the throat of a player who is on the ground after the play is dead. The universal response from players, legends, coaches, and fans across both leagues is that an official should have blown the whistle. And the reframe offered by one of the most prominent sports media voices in the country is that the people demanding a foul call are doing so because of Clark's race and sexuality, rather than because of what the footage plainly shows. This is the pattern that has defined 2 years of media coverage around every incident involving Caitlin Clark and physical contact. Every time she has been on the receiving end of contact that drew widespread concern, a section of the same media apparatus that spent 2 years questioning whether her success was racially manufactured has redirected the conversation toward Clark as a problem, as someone receiving too much attention, too much protection, too much institutional consideration, rather than toward the contact itself as the thing requiring examination. The foul call debate gets reframed as a racial argument. The people demanding accountability for the player who threw the fist get characterized as motivated by Clark's identity rather than by what the footage shows. The victim of the contact becomes the subject of the analysis, while the person who delivered the contact becomes, in some versions of this framing, a figure deserving of sympathy, or at minimum, of the benefit of the doubt that was never extended to Clark during 2 years of similar incidents being examined through a racial lens. LeBron James has watched this entire pattern develop. He has watched it from a position of unique expertise because he has spent over 2 decades as the most scrutinized, most discussed, most politically charged athlete in his own league. He knows exactly how media narratives get constructed around dominant players. He knows how those narratives shape the environment surrounding the player being discussed. And he knows the difference between genuine sports journalism and the kind of framing that uses sports as a vehicle for cultural arguments that have nothing to do with what is happening on the court. When he said that grown men and women are doing whatever they can to make sure the great things happening for the WNBA because of Clark do not happen, he was not making a vague statement about jealousy. He was naming something specific. And the media response to June 24th demonstrated exactly what he was naming. LaShawn McCoy's appearance on Speakeasy produced the single most historically grounded argument in the entire week of reaction to the Thomas incident, and it deserves to be examined in full because the precedent he invoked is not rhetorical. It is documented league policy that changed professional sports. His central claim was direct. If Caitlin Clark said she was done with the WNBA, the league would be over. Not diminished, not damaged, over. That assessment reflects the commercial reality of what the last 2 years have produced in terms of the league's financial trajectory. The broadcast deals, the sponsorship interest, the attendance numbers, the viewership records, every metric that defines a professional sports league's commercial health has moved in one direction since Clark entered the WNBA, and the direction has been up by margins that the league had not experienced at any previous point in its history. The argument that the WNBA would survive Clark's departure at anything close to its current commercial scale is not supportable by the available evidence. But McCoy did not stop at the financial argument. He went historical, and the history he invoked should be required reading for everyone in the WNBA's league office right now. Michael Jordan was the most important player in NBA history in terms of the league's commercial transformation. He was also, during the early years of his career, one of the most physically targeted players in the league. Opponents understood that eliminating Jordan's ability to operate at full capacity was the most effective path to competing against the Bulls. The physical tactics employed against him were documented and widely discussed within basketball circles. And at a certain point, the NBA made a decision. The rules around how Jordan could be contacted changed. The standard of officiating protection extended to the league's most important player shifted. The NBA recognized that allowing its franchise player to be systematically physically targeted was an existential threat to the product it was selling, and it responded with institutional action rather than case-by-case review. Tom Brady's knee injury produced a similar institutional response in the NFL. When Brady went down with an injury that was directly attributable to a style of contact that had been permitted under existing rules, the league changed the rules. Quarterbacks could no longer be contacted at the knee in the way that had produced Brady's injury. The NFL recognized that protecting its most valuable position, and specifically its most valuable practitioner of that position, was an organizational obligation rather than a special accommodation. McCoy's point is not that Clark deserves different rules than other players. His point is that every major professional sports league, when confronted with evidence that its most important player is being systematically targeted in ways that threaten both that player's physical safety and the league's commercial viability, has historically responded with institutional action that matches the severity of the threat. The WNBA is at that moment right now. The evidence is documented. The pattern is established. The commercial stakes are as clear as any set of numbers in recent sports business history. And the question McCoy is posing, the one that every person in the WNBA's front office needs to be sitting with, is whether this league has the institutional maturity to do what the NBA and NFL did, or whether it is going to keep processing each incident individually until the player it cannot afford to lose makes the decision that removes the choice from everyone else's hands. That is what accountability from a head coach sounds like when the situation is unambiguous. The Carrington press conference showed what happens when it is not, and the comparison between them is something every player in that Fever locker room has processed, consciously or not, in the weeks since both moments occurred. The Fever's additional complaint, that the league's investigation process did not include contact with their security team or coaching staff, adds a layer to White's post-game remarks that extends beyond her personal response into an organizational critique of how the league handled the aftermath. An investigation conducted without consulting the people closest to the incident on the night it happened is not an investigation designed to produce the most accurate possible understanding of what occurred. It is an investigation designed to produce a manageable outcome in a politically complicated situation. The Fever put that critique on the record. It sits there alongside everything else that documents how the league's institutional response to this incident compared to what the incident itself warranted. What June 24, 2026 revealed is not new information about any individual involved. It is new documentation of a pattern that has been building for 2 full years and has now produced its most extreme single expression on national television in front of the basketball world's full attention. The Thomas incident, the closed fist, the defenseless player, the official who did nothing, is the most visible data point in a set that stretches back to the first time Caitlin Clark took the court in a professional WNBA game and found herself navigating a physical and cultural environment that a significant portion of the media apparatus spent 2 consecutive years helping to construct and justify. The View told its audience that her popularity was about white privilege. ESPN told its audience that her young female fans were gravitating toward her because of racial identification. USA Today and the New York Times gave space to the argument that her commercial success reflected systemic bias rather than extraordinary ability. For 2 years, those messages circulated inside the same professional environment where Clark competes every night. LeBron James did not react to the Thomas incident as a casual observer. He reacted as someone who has been personally invested in Clark's trajectory through her most difficult stretch, who understands from 2 decades of direct personal experience what it feels like to be the most targeted player in your league, and who has watched a media narrative spend 2 years telling the world that the targeting of Caitlin Clark is somehow more complicated than the footage that documents it. His inner circle called what happened a bounty. That word carries specific weight from that specific source, and dismissing it requires ignoring both the relationship it comes from and the broader pattern it is being applied to. LaShawn McCoy gave the WNBA its historical mirror. Michael Jordan. The moments when the NBA and the NFL looked at what was happening to their most important players and made institutional decisions that matched the severity of the threat. The question is not whether Caitlin Clark is at that level of commercial and competitive importance to the WNBA. The evidence answers that question definitively. The question is whether the people running this league are going to make the same kind of institutional decision that their counterparts in the NBA and NFL made, or whether they are going to keep processing each incident as an isolated event until the player who makes the question moot removes herself from the equation entirely. Lisa Leslie gave the clearest verdict of anyone in the entire reaction landscape. The league has to do better. The officials have to do better. And the players, the ones whose conduct has been enabled by 2 years of media narrative that reframed their behavior toward Clark as culturally justified, have to clean it up. Those words came from the greatest version of what this league is capable of being, delivered as a direct message to the current version of what it is allowing itself to become. The question Bobby Burack raised in his Outkick piece this week is the one that the sports world needs to sit with honestly. Did the media's race narrative, The View, ESPN, the whole machine, contribute to the environment where Caitlin Clark gets a closed fist to the throat on national television, while the official with the direct sightline does nothing? The answer requires looking at 2 years of documented messaging, 2 years of documented on-court conduct, and one documented moment on June 24th, where every element of what that messaging produced was visible in a single play that the basketball world watched, with the same unified reaction of disbelief and outrage. The bounty allegation needs an answer. The investigation process needs a genuine accounting. The media voices that spent 2 years building the narrative that shaped this environment need to examine what that narrative produced. And the WNBA needs to decide, right now, whether it is the kind of institution that protects its generational talent with the same urgency that the NBA and the NFL eventually found, or whether it waits until that talent makes the decision for them. Drop your answer in the comments. Do you believe the 2-year media narrative contributed to the environment that produced June 24th? And what does real accountability from the league actually look like after a closed fist to the throat gets missed on national television?